My husband said I was worthless until he discovered I owned the company he worked for. Looked me straight in the eyes and said something I would never forget. He said it during dinner. Not in private. Not during an argument behind closed doors. He said it in front of his parents, his younger brother, and a few friends. Nobody said anything. I remember holding my fork in my hand and staring at the food on my plate. Back in his chair, smiling like he had just won an argument. Patricia laughed softly. "Well," she said, "he's not completely wrong." Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I could have stood up. I could have screamed. I could have told them the truth. But instead, I simply smiled. Then I said something that confused everyone at the table. "You might be right." Daniel looked surprised. He expected me to fight back. He expected tears. Instead, I picked up my glass, took a sip of water, what Daniel didn't know was that I had spent the last 10 years building something much bigger than he could imagine. And 6 months later, when Daniel walked into the office for the most important meeting of his career, he finally discovered exactly who I was. I was working at a small technology company in Chicago. At the time, I was 26 years old, ambitious, I had always been interested and completely obsessed with my work. While my friends were traveling, going to parties, and spending their weekends relaxing, I was reading financial reports and teaching myself how companies grew. My father had been a mechanic. My mother worked at the local school cafeteria. They taught me one important lesson. Never depend completely on anyone. Work hard. Save money. And never let someone else decide your value. When I met Daniel, I thought he understood that. He was charming, confident, funny. He worked in sales and knew exactly how to make people feel important. When we started dating, he always told me how much he admired my ambition. He would say, "You actually want something from life?" Back then, I believed him. We got married 3 years later. At first, everything was good. We rented a small apartment. Daniel worked for a large consulting company. I started my own small business with 2 employees. It was nothing special in the beginning. We helped small companies improve their customer service systems. I worked from our kitchen table. I answered emails at midnight. Sometimes I worked 16 hours a day. Daniel used to joke about it. "You work too much." Then he would laugh. "But at least one of us is going to become a millionaire." I thought we were a team. I was wrong. Over the years, my business slowly grew. 1 client became 5. 5 became 20. 20 became 50. Eventually, we opened an office. Then another one. Then another. But I made a decision early on. I never wanted my personal life connected to my company. I had seen too many people change when money entered the picture. So I created a holding structure with my business partner, Michael. The company operated under a corporate name that had nothing to do with me. Michael became the face of the company. He was the CEO. I became the majority owner and focused on strategy, investments, and expansion. And Michael agreed. "Let me deal with the attention," he told me. "You build the machine behind the scenes." That arrangement worked perfectly. Within 8 years, our company had grown into one of the fastest growing technology service companies in the region. Major contracts, investors, and more money than I ever imagined having. But Daniel barely noticed. Or maybe he noticed and simply didn't care. Whenever someone asked what I did for a living, Daniel would usually Emily answer does some business stuff. Some business stuff. I used to laugh when he said it. Eventually, it stopped being funny. Daniel's career was going in the opposite direction. He changed jobs constantly. Every new company was supposed to be his big opportunity. Every boss was supposed to recognize his talent. But somehow, according to Daniel, someone else was always responsible when things didn't work out. His coworkers were jealous. The company didn't understand his ideas. Nothing was ever his fault. At first, I supported him. I helped him rewrite his resume. I practiced interviews with him. I introduced him to people in my network. But Daniel never knew who those people really were. I didn't tell him. I wanted him to succeed on his own. Instead, he slowly became bitter. The more successful I became, the more distant he became. He started making jokes about my work. Then the jokes became insults. Your little company isn't going to last forever. Anyone can get lucky once. You think you're smarter than everyone. I ignored it. I told myself he was stressed. Then one night, I came home from a business trip earlier than expected. I walked into our bedroom. Daniel wasn't there. But his phone was. It was sitting on the kitchen counter. A message appeared on the screen. I wasn't trying to read it. But the notification was impossible to miss. It said, "I miss you already. Last night was incredible." My hands started shaking. The message was from a woman named Sophia, one of his coworkers. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. Then another message appeared. "Don't worry, she has no idea." That was the moment something inside me changed. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't call Sophia. Instead, I put the phone back exactly where I found it. Then I sat on the couch and waited. When Daniel came home 2 hours later, he kissed me on the forehead. "Hey, babe." I looked at him. "How was work?" He smiled. "Same old nonsense." I smiled back. "I understand." For the next 3 months, I watched. I watched Daniel lie. I watched him disappear for hours. I watched him become more confident, more careless. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was dependent on him. He had no idea that I was preparing for the moment I would finally walk away. The night Daniel called me worthless. His mother had invited everyone over to celebrate Daniel's new job. He had just been hired by a major consulting company. He was proud. Everyone was proud. His father raised a glass to Daniel's future. Everyone cheered. Then Patricia looked at me. "And what about you, Emily? Still playing businesswoman?" The table became quiet. I smiled politely. "Yes, still playing." Daniel laughed. "You know, sometimes I think Emily forgets who pays the real bills around here." "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Come on, my job is stable. Yours is whatever you do." I could feel everyone watching. I asked him calmly, "Do you know how much I make?" Daniel laughed. "Doesn't matter. I'm talking about real work." Then he leaned toward me. "You're nothing without me." That was when Patricia laughed. And that was when I finally understood something. Daniel didn't love me. Maybe he once had. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me as his partner. He saw me as someone he could control. Someone who would always stay. Someone who needed him. So I smiled. "You might be right." Nobody knew what to say. 10 minutes later, I left. Daniel didn't come after me. That night, I stayed at the hotel. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I had already prepared most of the documents. Daniel had been cheating. I had evidence. I had financial records. And most importantly, I had finally accepted the truth. The marriage was over. When Daniel received the divorce papers, he was furious. He called me 27 times in one day. I didn't answer. Then he came to my office. Not my real office. The small consulting office he knew about. By then, I had already moved most of my personal belongings. He stood outside the building and waited for me. Are you seriously doing this? Yes. Over one mistake? One mistake? He looked away. Okay, more than one. I laughed. For the first time in months, I actually laughed. Then Daniel's face changed. You're going to regret this. Maybe. You think you're going to survive without me? I looked at him. I guess we'll find out. The divorce took 4 months. Daniel fought over everything. The apartment. The furniture. The savings. He even tried to claim part of my company. Unfortunately for him, the business he knew about was Legally,
almost worthless
he had no
compared
claim
to
to
the
the
larger
larger
company
company
he owned.
He didn't even know it existed. When the divorce was finalized, Daniel walked away with far
And
less
for a
than
while,
he expected.
I didn't hear from him.
Then, 6 months later, something unexpected happened. Michael called me. You're not going to believe this. What? A new senior sales manager just joined one of our partner companies. He keeps mentioning your name. I froze. What is his name? Michael started laughing. Daniel Walker. I couldn't speak. Daniel had somehow been hired by one of our largest
His
partner
new job
companies. Depended heavily on securing a major contract. And that contract was with us. With my company. Michael continued. He's been telling everyone that his ex-wife used to run some tiny
closed
business.
my eyes.
Of course he has. Apparently, Daniel had no idea who owned our company.
Why would he?
The company name was different. My name wasn't on the website. Michael was the public face. To Daniel, I was still just Emily, his unsuccessful ex-wife. A few days later, Michael called again. We have a problem. What happened? Daniel's company is pitching us next week. I sat silently. And? They want you in the meeting. I smiled. Of course they do. The meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. I thought about refusing. I didn't want revenge. At least that's what I told myself. But then I remembered Daniel standing over me in that restaurant. I remembered his mother laughing. I remembered Sophia's messages. And most importantly, I remembered the way Daniel looked at me when he said I was nothing without him. Monday arrived. I wore a simple black suit. Nothing expensive. Nothing dramatic. I didn't want Daniel to see me as a different person. I wanted him to recognize exactly who I had been all along. When I entered the conference room, Michael was already there. The board members were waiting. Then the door opened. Daniel walked in with 3 executives from his company. He was laughing. Confident. He looked successful. For about 2 seconds, he didn't notice me. Then he stopped. His face changed. Emily? I smiled. Hello, Daniel. One of the executives looked confused. You two know each other? Daniel stared at me. We used to be married. The room became quiet. Michael stood up. Then you already know our majority owner. Daniel looked at him. What? Michael smiled. Emily Carter. Daniel looked back at me. Then at Michael. Then at the documents on the table. I watched the color disappear from his face. No? I said nothing. Daniel laughed nervously. Wait, you're joking. Michael didn't laugh. Emily founded this company with me 10 years ago. Daniel stared at me. But your business? The small office? I smiled. That was one of several. For the first time in our entire marriage, Daniel looked completely powerless. He slowly sat down. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then the meeting began. Daniel's presentation was terrible. Not because he wasn't prepared, but because he couldn't stop looking at me. Every few minutes, his eyes moved toward my side of the table. I remained professional. I asked questions. I listened. I took notes. When the presentation ended, Daniel's CEO smiled. So, what do you think? I looked at the proposal. Then I looked at Daniel. It's interesting. Daniel swallowed. I continued. But I have concerns about the leadership structure. One of the executives leaned forward. What concerns? I looked directly at Daniel. I believe leadership requires accountability. Daniel's face turned pale. I agree, he said quietly. I almost smiled. Almost. The meeting ended without a decision. As everyone left, Daniel stayed behind. The door closed. For the first time in months, we were alone. He looked different. Smaller. Not physically. But something inside him had changed. I didn't know. I nodded. I know. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at him for a long time. Would it have changed anything? He didn't answer. I continued. When we first met, you loved that I had dreams. Daniel looked down. When did that change? He closed his eyes. I don't know. Yes, you do. He looked at me. And suddenly, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Regret. I was jealous, he said. I laughed softly. Of me? You were succeeding. And you weren't. He nodded. I hated it. The honesty surprised me. Daniel sat down. I thought if I made you feel small, I would feel bigger. I stood silently. Then I said something I had waited years to say. It worked. He looked at me. What? For a while it worked. You made me question myself.
Daniel's
You
eyes
made me
filled with
think I
tears.
needed you. Emily, I'm sorry. I believed him. And strangely, that was enough. I didn't need him to suffer. I didn't need to destroy his career. I didn't need revenge. Because Daniel had already lost the one thing he thought he controlled. I picked up my bag. Before leaving, I turned toward him. The company will make its decision based on your proposal,
Daniel
not
looked
our
surprised.
past. You mean that? Yes. He stood up. Why? I opened the door. Because I'm not you. Then I walked away. 3 weeks later, Daniel's company lost the contract, not because of him. Another company simply had a better proposal. Daniel sent me one final message. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're happy. I stared at the message for a while. Then I deleted it. Not because I was angry, but because I had finally moved on. A year later, I moved to a new city. The company continued to grow. Michael and I expanded internationally. I bought a small house near the lake. Every morning, I drank coffee on the balcony and watched the sunrise. Sometimes I thought about that dinner. The night Daniel called me worthless. For years, I believed revenge meant making someone suffer. But I learned something different. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to stay where you are not respected. Means walking away. And sometimes, the people who underestimate you are only doing so because they never took the time to discover who you really are. I wasn't nothing without him. I was everything I had been trying to become. I just needed to stop believing someone else had the right to decide my worth. And the day I finally understood that was the day I became free.